adaptable.
No.
Okay.
Okay, and we are live.
It looks like we are about to go live. Dude, I've got so much stuff to talk about, man. We're going to have to really rush through some of this stuff. Just FYI. We are... Oh, we got a countdown.
Oh yeah, we do.
That's
All right.
very necessary.
Probably should have started at 10 seconds.
199.
I could have done a longer one.
While this is counting down, we should tell people that if you're listening to the audio only... Well, no. I think we would cut it off before this.
Yeah, we would. All right, 2, 1.
Boom! And we are live. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast, episode 202, the podcast that explores work of think tanks across the country. As always, I'm your host, Donald Kendall, and joining me today, I've got sitting to my left, producer extraordinaire, Andy, who we are actually going to be testing out some new software here because Google Hangouts is no longer a thing, apparently, so... Bear with us if we have technical difficulties. Also joining us, we have got Isaac Orr, policy fellow at the Center of the American Experiment. Isaac, pancakes, waffles, or French toast?
French toast.
No justification or reasoning?
It doesn't need justification or reasoning. The answer is obvious.
All right. Also joining us, we have Justin Haskins.
But I'm going to call it freedom toast.
Freedom Toast. Justin Haskins, who is the editorial director at the Heartland Institute. Same question, Justin.
It depends.
It depends, he says, before being cut off. Great. Fantastic. We actually had a comment. Let me see if I could pull this up real quick.
Some guy didn't know what he was talking about and wrote into the show.
So I asked Isaac, who would win in a fight in their prime, Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone, to which he said, without a doubt, it's got to be Sylvester Stallone. To which Coach Tim Mendoza replied to our video saying that Arnold was one of the strongest bodybuilders in the history of the sport. He was a strongman contest winner from way back in Austria before even coming to America or ever taking steroids. And he didn't take nearly as many steroids as modern bodybuilders do today. So they had little to do with whatever it was you were trying to say. Obviously, Isaac is misinformed. So
I'd like to know if Coach Mendoza was like sampling his pee the whole time. Like, how does he know?
Yeah, Coach Mendoza, please come back to us. Let us know where you got
Put
this
me in,
inside
Coach.
information.
What?
Because
What does it matter? What I don't understand is what does it matter? The question was not who, like steroids had nothing to do with it. It was who would win. It was who would win the debate. It doesn't matter if there's
It's not a debate.
A fight.
We're not a fight. Yeah. It's
Oh
not
my God!
Major
Can you
League
imagine
Baseball.
a debate between those two guys? Like, get in the chopper, hey, Adrian.
Isaac, can I mention that one of the most loyal fans of this show, my wife, her favorite person, including me, is you on the podcast.
What? That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah, so just an FYI, in case you need an attaboy to add
That's
to your
deeply
list.
offensive.
To who?
To both of us, frankly.
Humanity.
So episode 202, we have got a ton of stuff to get to. We are going to be talking about the craziest proposals from your Democratic presidential candidates. We also have a little bit of a big attaboy here, if that one wasn't big enough for you, Isaac, so we'll get to that shortly. But there's just a couple of other things that I want to get to first. Also estimating the income tax rates, income tax hikes required to pay for Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all. So we'll get to that as well towards the end of the show. But I want to talk about a couple of other small items before we get to those topics at hand. And the first one kind of ties into the topic that we talked about last week, which was the capitalism is saving the planet. Obviously, Justin and I are kind of at the forefront of Heartland's Stopping Socialism project, so when it comes to defending capitalism or fighting back socialism, usually we're kind of hot on the trail of some of these things. So what I've got in front of me is an article from the Cato Institute's Human Progress website, which is a fantastic website. I always talk about it here on the show. This is an article titled Unskilled Workers and Food Prices in America, 1919 to 2019. So this basically starts off talking about Ocasio-Cortez, one of our favorite socialists. And but basically it's I put my own my own spin on this a little bit, but basically a few months ago, tens of thousands of people flocked to Texas for a 10-day-long festival to appreciate music, film, art, and other indulgences. This is the South by Southwest. And one of the nights, attendees gathered with their friends, readied their pocket-sized supercomputers to record mode to listen to Ocasio-Cortez talk about how capitalism is irredeemable. So it's just like, on its face, it's just such a ridiculous thing that, like, you know, we're able to spend 10 days going out to just hang out at festivals with friends and listen to music and stuff like that, and then also be lecture about how capitalism is irredeemable. So before I get into any of
You didn't build that, Donnie.
I mean, do you have
build that?
Is this wrong of me to kind of point out the supposed hypocritical nature of that, or you know, do you think it's fair for her to have this criticism at this venue?
I think what they believe is that we would have built those supercomputers anyway. We would have built all these technological innovations we have, all of this.
Oh, cutting out.
Yeah, Justin's gone. No, I think that these people should have to live like Little House on the Prairie. Like, I think that we should just like set aside Nebraska as like a refuge for people that think that capitalism is evil, so they can go try out everything that they want. But they have to do it like Laura Ingalls Wilder. We can make it. We can rename Nebraska Green New Deal. Nebraska.
New Deal, Nebraska. That's the only way that they. Yeah. And feel free to just jump in, Justin, if you got your kind of audio situation figured out there. Again, sorry for any hiccups. We are dealing with some new software here. But the point of the article that's in front of me is that they go through and they compared inflation-adjusted prices of a basket of goods from today and 100 years ago. And they basically, what did they find out? 5 different things here. The time price, which is the nominal price divided by the nominal hourly wage of the basket of commodities, fell from 47 hours of work to 10. So basically what you would need in 1919, you would need to work 47 hours to get this basket of goods. Now you only have to work 10. The unweighted average time price fell by 79%. Put differently, for the same amount of work that allowed unskilled laborers to purchase one basket of the 42 commodities in 1919, he or she could buy 7.6 baskets in 2019. The compounded rate of affordability of the basket of commodities rose at 2.05% per year. Put differently, an unskilled laborer saw his or her purchasing power double every 34 years. So a little bit counter to the point that AOC was trying to make, that capitalism is actually making people poorer. The evidence shows otherwise. Justin, we got you back? I guess not.
Yeah, I think that that's something that is really interesting and important to look at, because when you look at, people like to look at wages, and they like to look at, the wages for median incomes have been relatively stagnant over the last 40 years, but the purchasing power continues to increase in sectors that are not overly regulated by the government. So when you have restrictions like housing or Medicare or what's the other one? I was reading something in LinkedIn this morning that was talking about how, home prices are going up. It's like, that's because we have restrictive zoning. I mean, like in all the areas where the government isn't incredibly involved, we've seen the purchasing power for consumers actually increase.
Yep. Justin, you want to chime in on this before we move on to the other topic? If I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yes!
Oh, I don't know what happened.
Now you're
okay.
so loud, though. Turn your mic down.
Yeah, a little loud. take a one
Further, should I-
scoot back. Yeah, there you go.
It's like
All right.
it's like that shout
How about
song,
that?
just a little
Better?
bit softer now.
give
A
us
little
your
bit
take.
softer
Yeah, you're good.
now.
All right, so basically, I think this is the most important argument that anyone could possibly make with socialists today. The idea that we have this wealth disparity that we're always hearing about, how there's this gigantic wealth gap, and that this is so important. The wealth gap is not important. What's important is your purchasing power. It doesn't really matter what the wealth gap is. If everybody is living like kings, right? So theoretically, if we could have this world where everyone is living like kings, does it matter that there is some king out there who has more wealth than all the other kings? No. No. So wealth disparity is totally irrelevant. What matters is quality of life. Is our quality of life improving? And there is no question whatsoever that purchasing power is improving, that our quality of life is improving without any question whatsoever. And not just over the past 100 years. Donnie referenced having supercomputer in your back pocket. If we think about purchasing power, right? If you were living in the 1970s, let's say, how many hours would you have to work to buy a computer? How much wealth would you need to have in order to purchase a computer? Only governments probably had computers back then. You didn't have personal computers in the 1970s for most people. All right, so that technology didn't even really exist. So you would have had to have, in modern terms, millions and millions of dollars in order to have a computer. Now everyone can have a computer. Now everyone can have a computer in their back pocket. There's a reason. This is all the result of capitalism and free markets. And socialists who continuously obsess over the wealth gap miss the point that if you look at wealth and technology as being kind of similar, being the same thing, there's no question whatsoever that technological improvements which come from wealthy companies, which come from wealthy businesses and entrepreneurs, that has absolutely filtered down to the rest of society, so that now everybody has access to technological innovations that they never had access to before. So people mock trickle-down economics, but there's no question that in terms of quality of life, that has absolutely happened. We are living better today. Middle-class people live better today than the richest people in the late 1800s or even early 1900s, and it's not even close.
So here's a question for you. I'm wondering if this is like a valid point, and maybe you can correct me if I'm off base here, but like the idea of wealth inequality, right? There's some 1% that's like super rich or something like that. I was thinking about it, like, is it fair to say that 1% of wealth is like the spearhead that kind of like pushes towards certain innovations? Because I would think that like in the 80s when people had those like giant cell phones or whatever, it was only like the super rich that were able to buy that. But because of that market for those things, it drove the incentive to create bigger and better, or smaller, I guess, smaller and better cell phones and stuff like that, which eventually made them, affordable for everybody. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if you're looking at how technology filters down to people, there is no question whatsoever that has occurred, and that it always starts with people at the top. There is to some extent, you obviously want people to become wealthier. That's something that we want. We want wages to rise. We want people to become wealthier. But generally speaking, these improvements in life and quality of life and stuff like that always starts with people at the top, and it always filters down. Show me one quality of life improvement. We're not talking about some like extravagant, I own 5 yachts kind of thing, but I'm just talking about electricity, computers, television, color television, flat screen television. These were all luxury items. Being able to buy food from other parts of the world. At one point in time, all these things were luxury items, and now everybody has access to them, or almost everybody.
Right. Yeah, I was also thinking of like space travel or something like that, where
Well,
it's
true.
like
Yeah.
you've got these, I don't know if it's like Tesla or whatever, Elon Musk's group, or whatever, that Virgin Airlines or something like that. Like they are trying to come up with like commercial space travel for like the 16 people that can afford it.
Yeah.
But that's just, again, it's just that spearhead of innovation that starts at that 1% of wealth. So.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of SpaceX, people like
SpaceX,
that. But
yeah,
I
that's
think
Elon Musk, yeah.
Right, I think so. Yeah, so that's right. And if you think, and people might, sort of scoff at that and say, "Oh, well, yeah, like we're going to be flying to space." That's what people probably thought when we first rolled out airplanes.
Sure.
And the only people who were flying commercial airplanes across the country were people who were super rich. Now everybody flies, and it's very common to fly in airplanes. Same thing with cars. There was a time when people were still riding around on horseback while rich people were driving down the street in a car. And
They're horseless
think
carriages.
think about the wealth disparity there, where some people had cars and other people had horses. I mean, that's amazing. There were parts of the country that didn't even have paved roads for a long period of time. They didn't even have the ability to drive cars. Well, yeah, but I mean roads that you couldn't even drive a car on if you wanted to. And now, you could drive a car anywhere. So this whole notion that things are not getting better is laughable. Things are obviously getting better, and it's because it always starts with people at the top.
Let's move on to this other one. I want to get to this before we get to the actual topics at hand. So this was an article that you sent me. It's from Page 6. Justin, you sent this to me. So ICC 13 just wrapped up in D.C., our International Conference on Climate Change. Andy worked diligently to get all of the individual speeches and stuff like that sectioned out and posted on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested in seeing any of that, feel free to go to Heartland Institute's YouTube page. However, I must say, and I think we got Jim listening here, and he might be dismayed to hear this, but that was only the second most popular climate conference that happened in recent times here. The first being Google's extravagant climate change camp, which apparently has been mocked as a party for entitled fools. So this article that I have in front of me, and everything that we talk about will be linked in the show notes, says Google's carbon-spewing climate change conference at the Italian resort has been widely slammed as a tone-deaf party for elite A-listers who jetted there. Is there anything more hypocritical than a bunch of rich people flying private jets across the world to sit on yachts and discuss the future of our planet? Said Twitter user blah, 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 blah. As the party drew to a close on Thursday, newspaper columns and social media were awash with criticism of the three-day billionaire-packed event, which saw more than 200 of the world's richest and most famous names take private jets to an Italian island and stay on mega yachts while they were talking about stopping climate change. There's a few more kind of quotes that are just pointing to the supposed hypocritical nature of this. But again, similar to the question I had with the AOC South by Southwest event, is this a valid thing to kind of point out, the hypocritical nature of it? Isaac, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, of course it is, because these are the same people that eat fancy caviar that's imported from Russia, and they're like, hey, you that's eating Spam, you should really care more about the environment.
There were 114 private jets flown to this island. 114 private jets.
Let's ban private jets.
They care. Well, I mean, it's amazing. They care so much about the climate. They care so much about climate change that they are not even willing to fly first class. Like that's not even good enough for them. They can't even be amongst the unwashed masses.
Yeah.
They have to fly their own private jets. It's just so laughable. I mean, what is the carbon footprint of this one event? How many days of my life would it take me to spew as this much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere? I mean, they probably produce more carbon dioxide in this one event than I will in the next 10 years of my life.
Right.
So I mean, I just can't. It's just amazing sometimes. I mean, we could talk about the Al Gore hypocrisy and all. This has been a problem for a very, very long time, but it never ceases to amaze me because they're so self-righteous about it. They're so self-righteous about climate change, and then they are the first people who are totally unwilling to do anything in their lives to reduce their carbon footprint.
Well,
they have no interest in that at all.
And that's the point that kind of really gets to me or whatever. It's it's so easy for them to go to this little posh Italian island or whatever and just virtue signal about all the different things that we have to do to save the climate and all of that stuff. It's so easy for them because even if those policies are put into effect, it really doesn't change their life at all, right? If energy prices and gas prices and stuff go up like crazy, it's probably a tiny fraction of anything that would even be noticeable for them. However, on the other side, it's people like you and I, or like, we talk about the regressive nature of these policies and the effects that come from these policies, where like the poorer you are and the bigger of a slice of your income that goes to making sure that you have energy in the winter and stuff like that sustainable life just becomes harder and harder and harder. So again, it's just so easy for them to say, but like we're the ones that have to deal with the consequences of the policies that they're pushing.
I think at minimum there should be a rule that we shouldn't listen to anyone who talks about climate change ever again until they completely abandon private air travel for flying first class. If you are not willing to make that sacrifice, which is like a tiny little sacrifice, you should not be allowed to speak about this, period.
I think that they should have to live in Green New Deal, Nebraska in order to have any credibility.
Right.
Like, they gotta have an iron plow behind a horse, just smelling horse farts as they're like tending their fields all day, and then I'll start to think about it. But until then,
you know what's funny is that this whole New Deal Nebraska, it's basically living with the Amish. Like, why can't they just go live with the Amish? Just go live with the Amish. If you live with the Amish for any extended period of time at all, I will start to listen to you.
It's got to be
until
like 6
then,
months.
I'm not listening to you.
Right. I don't want
I agree.
some after
I
you
agree.
visit.
Can't be a weekend.
Yeah.
No. Can't be a weekend. Can't be like a freaking bed and breakfast, Amish bed and breakfast. It's got to be like you're there for 6 months.
You got to do
And
the
you're
work.
right. They got to be working the fields too.
Exactly.
They can't just be sitting around while the Amish are all tending to all of their needs or whatever. No, they have to be working the fields and living a truly green lifestyle. Until then, I don't want to hear from you.
Churning lots of butter. Raise a barn on Monday. Soon I'll raise another.
Oh man, we got Weird Al quotes going here.
That's right.
We
Amish
just took
paradise,
We
baby.
just took the podcast to a whole nother level. All right, gentlemen, we're going to run out of time if we don't get to actual topics at hand here. So let's start off by talking about the 2019 Bob Williams Award. So this was not on my radar. We are a podcast that explores the work of think tanks across the country. We should know about an award ceremony that awards people that do the things that we cover on this podcast. So we will definitely rectify that in coming iterations of these award shows. So let's see here. This is from the State Policy Network, or SPN. They do fantastic jobs kind of coordinating efforts of state-based think tanks across the country. So it says the Bob Williams Awards for Outstanding Policy Achievement recognizes state think tanks doing exceptional work to create and disseminate credible policy research and ideas that will help states implement free market solutions and expand personal freedom and opportunity for all Americans. So they do 5 different categories, apparently, one being most influential research, 2 being best issue campaign, 3 being the biggest home state win, and 4 the biggest win in general. So the winners will be announced at SPN's 27th annual meeting in Colorado Springs, Colorado on October 29th through November 1st. And you can vote on the winners if you're interested. So let's start off with most influential research. So this category recognizes the organization whose original research achieved a high level of influence in academia, media, or policy-making arenas. 2019 finalists in this category demonstrated a high level of research quality and impact, with the research ultimately achieving some degree of policy victory. So our 3 finalists, we have got the Empire Center, uncovering corruption and abuse in the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Number 2, the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, laying groundwork for occupational licensing reforms. And there's another one in there. So, I'm kidding. The 3rd one is the Center for the American Experiment, saving Minnesotans from a costly electricity mandate. That's right, Isaac Orr himself. You got nominated. How happy are you?
Oh man, I think it's the cover that did it. Just the dollar bills and the wind turbines and the solar panels. But no, this is so awesome. there's a voting mechanism for, I don't know how they weight all the effectiveness of it, but man, you can vote every day on multiple devices. So people vote early, vote often.
Nice, yeah. Hashtag vote for Isaac. Isaac.
Hashtag vote Chicago style.
I'm
I'm going to get dead people to vote for this thing.
Make your case, man. So they say here that it's got to have impact and ultimately achieving some degree of policy victory. Can you make a case for your study doing those things?
Oh, absolutely. The legislature wanted to go 100% carbon free by 2050. We were the only game in town when it came to producing some sort of research that was showing, hey, this is actually going to be really bad. So we had radio ads. We even had a 4.5-minute video of our study, basically just showing all the terrible things that would happen. And we placed it in terms of things that people could actually understand. So we basically said, one school district would have to lay off 10 teachers making $56,000 a year in order to pay for their electric bill if we passed this sort of legislation. So we really were able to head this off at the pass in a way that wouldn't have happened if we weren't so involved in the energy issue, because there are just so many voices on the other side that it's been really fun. And also, other states have reached out to us and said, hey, this is a great paper. We want to do this for our state. Can you help? And we're actually working on teaching other states how to do the same thing. So, yeah, it's going to be great.
All right, fantastic. And people, this is the Bob Williams Awards. We'll have the link in the show notes. You can Google it. But, I don't want to see any of this apathy where it's like, my vote won't matter, because there's probably like 65 people that are voting for this thing. So get in there. Put your vote towards Isaac. Hashtag vote for Isaac. Isaac, I think you're looking good here. I think your chances are good. So do you want to practice an acceptance speech?
Yeah, y'all suck. I'm better than all of you. Check out these guns. Mwah. Mwah. Do you think that'll go
okay,
over well?
all right.
I literally, can I just say, while this was all happening, I took the time to go in and vote for Isaac, and now I totally regret it and wish I had never done that.
Yeah, can you take your vote back? Because
I'm gonna actually email them and demand that I get my vote back. I want a negative vote. I want to take a negative vote away from him.
Yeah. All right, cool. Very cool stuff. So also we've got here another category, Best Issue Campaign. Nominated, we've got Empower Mississippi, who I believe we've actually featured somebody on this podcast from that organization. Their campaign is hashtag waitlisted, talking about how Mississippi lawmakers stalled additional funding for the state's educational scholarship accounts, or ESAs. We have also got the Foundation for Government Accountability, which is their issue campaign here is Waivers Gone Wild, which is talking about work requirements. And
the next
also,
title is so good.
Yes, Independence Institute, Fix Our Damn Roads, which I think wins just based on the title. So that one's getting my vote. Category, I'm just going to kind of blaze through all of these here. Biggest home state win, Commonwealth Foundation expanding school choice to 15,000 more students. Great job there. Mississippi Center for Public Policy advancing the nation's first state-based donor privacy reform. And the Washington Policy Center stopping a capital gains tax with a coordinated issue campaign. And the last one real quick, we have got biggest win. So we've got the Buckeye Institute rescinding the Obama-era rule so that states have more choice and flexibility in their healthcare programs. The Libertas Institute passing the nation's first Digital Privacy Act. And the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty defending a professor's free speech and setting a precedent for free speech on campus. So apparently the voting for this goes on, I think, up until when the actual awards are in late October there. So maybe in the meantime, Justin and I were talking about this, maybe we will invite on some of the people representing some of these organizations that could also give their pitch for why their thing deserves the award. And I think we'll start with Isaac's competition. What do you think?
That would actually
Yeah.
be fun. I'm like, so what in your brain made you think that you could possibly beat me?
Right. Yeah. I'll let you lead the
Like,
questioning.
The
You
gall,
won't be
sir.
there, Isaac. Isaac, obviously, we're not going to invite you when we bring on the competition.
Yeah, that's
We're gonna.
probably
The whole
smart.
point of this. The whole point of this is to stop you from winning. So clearly, we don't want you involved.
Hashtag unfollow Justin. Hashtag don't vote for Isaac.
No way. No way. I'm throwing my full support. I endorse the Isaac campaign for this for the Bob Williams prize.
That's
here.
the kiss of death right there, Isaac. So you're screwed now. Sorry.
All right, guys. Let's do our kind of main topic at hand here, which is the craziest proposals from our Democratic presidential candidates. So we had this conversation. We actually kind of started this conversation, Justin and I, earlier today. Justin, can we give kind of full context of why this kind of was a topic of discussion, or should we kind of tiptoe around that?
Let's just say that somebody at a certain cable news network approached me and wanted me to explain what I think the three most. I can tell what you guys are thinking. I know.
trying to big
Approached
time
me,
us.
and I'm not trying to big time you. I'm explaining why I am big timing you. It's different. They approached me and wanted to know what I thought the three craziest things are, so we could do a segment on national TV, in prime time. That's
Okay, yeah, we get it. So yeah,
Yeah.
some very interesting.
So
very
naturally, I went
influential
to Donnie because I didn't know the answer.
person. Yeah, that's
So-
you know what? That's the truth.
That's the real
I
story
don't,
here.
I don't know if people realize. Yeah, Justin's on all of these shows, and he's on Varney and Co. and Tucker
You're just
Carlson.
the brain behind it. Yeah.
And yeah, he's just the figurehead. He comes to me for all those talking points. I don't know if people realize that, but the real brains behind the organization is this guy. So just an FYI. So that kind of
True.
started a morning-long kind of research campaign here to see what we could really dig up of what we would be considered the top three craziest proposals being thrown out there by our presidential candidates on the left. So I think we've got two of them pretty nailed down, right? And we
Yeah.
really need to kind of crowdsource this third one.
Do we want to mention them before Isaac has a chance to give us his? Isaac, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I didn't watch it.
Well, there was nothing to watch. It hasn't happened yet.
There was-
So,
there was-
are you
there
not
was
paying
yesterday.
attention to the lead up? My
Yeah.
God. You're talking about the debates. No, we're not talking about the debates, Isaac.
Yeah, we're-
Go take a nap.
I need one.
So I don't know. I think that the better way to kind of go about this is to start off with the kind of the low hanging fruit options, and then we'll ramp
Yeah.
up to what we think is the kind of
Yeah.
the
So when I
craziest.
called Donnie, his initial the first thing that he thought of was giving health care to illegal immigrants, people who came here illegally. I think that's absolutely at first, for like half a second, I thought, I don't know. Is that really but then Donnie had this great line where he said that it's essentially like offering free health care to 7 billion people.
Right.
And because that's really what it is. You're saying if you're saying we're going to give you free health care, we don't care if you're here legally or not. Then what's stopping some country from sending over boatloads, train loads, airplane loads of sick people, and then we just treat them here? I mean, what's to stop everyone in Canada from just walking across the border and getting their brain tumors removed and then going back home? We have to treat them no matter what, whether they're here legally or not. So, I mean, it's really crazy when you think of it like that. I mean, it's really nuts.
So I looked this up. I was trying to see if there was any kind of articles or anything like this, just kind of talking about this idea, because obviously this kind of got pushed into the national spotlight in the first round of debates. I'm not sure if it was night 1 or 2, but the crowd of 10 different candidates was asked who would be in favor of endorsing a plan that would provide health care coverage to undocumented immigrants, right? And everyone, it was unanimous. Everyone raised their hand. So it seems like this is just one of the party platforms on the left, apparently. So I look it up, and I find an article from the New York Times which is what would giving health care to undocumented immigrants mean? And in case you weren't aware, the New York Times isn't really a bastion of conservative thought by any means, but they had some kind of interesting things to say that I kind of highlighted here. So one of them being, do other countries provide health care to undocumented immigrants? It says, if the United States were to begin providing comprehensive health coverage to undocumented immigrants, it would be an outlier, health policy experts say. Even countries with universal government-run coverage, like Norway, place tough restrictions on health care for undocumented immigrants.
Wow.
So it's not like we're like following the lead of all these other organizations. Like this is just like way, way outside the norm. Who's typing? Stop that. Who's hammering? Stop the hammering. Yeah, I did see that. It's you, Justin. All right, in addition to that, how much would it cost to provide them health care? Stop typing.
Mute yourself, Justin.
Oh, no. I think everything got muted. All right.
Good.
It says,
We don't need him.
So how much would it cost to provide them health care? It says neither the Congressional Budget Office nor independent experts have worked up a cost estimate. Some economists say that the expense of providing primary care would eventually pay off because it would keep people from waiting until they were very sick to seek treatment. So the fact that like there's not even an estimate on how much that this would cost us, everybody on that stage raised their hands in support of this program. Like what universe? This is Clown World. What universe are we in?
It's Bizarro World. It's Green New Deal Braska.
Hashtag Green New Deal Braska.
Hashtag New State. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like they don't even know how much it'll cost, but they're for it.
Yeah.
I mean, and then people think that they're credible on any other issue. I mean, when you look at the way that they just want to spend people's money without ever actually knowing how much they're spending, like, man,
Right.
they all got English lit degrees in college or something.
Yeah, so I think like all of that, especially taking those kind of items kind of into play here, I think that really solidifies this item as being one of the top 3 craziest proposals that are coming from the Democratic presidential candidates. Justin, do you want to add on to this before I kind of start setting up for the other ones?
No.
Okay, great. So the other thing that we were trying to come up with when we were originally talking about this was that there are plenty of crazy ideas. We are not short on crazy ideas. It's just like what reaches that threshold of being the top 3 craziest ideas. And so, I mean, we can go through all the different things. I think after the first debates, I listed off just like a laundry list of all the different things that they were promising, from job guarantees, healthcare for all, college loan forgiveness, all of these different things. But we were wondering which ones actually reach that tier of like super crazy. So before we get to what we think the most crazy one is, and then we can brainstorm how we would fill out the 3, I do want to point to a really cool thing that I found from the Tax Foundation, which they have a little if you go to their main website, there's a little subcategory thing that you can click on that's called 2020 Democratic Presidential Campaign Tax Proposals. And there's articles that are dedicated to kind of just like facets of these people's platforms. So, for example, they have a whole thing on Warren's wealth tax. They have a whole thing on Biden's capital gains tax proposal. They have a article on Beto O'Rourke's war tax and Booker's renter's credit, a whole bunch of them. And I've got one from here. This is, does Andrew Yang's freedom dividend proposal add up? So this goes through and it kind of talks about Andrew Yang's plan to provide each American adult $1,000 per month in universal basic income, or what he calls the freedom dividend, and how he would supposedly fund this. So it goes through, and the Tax Foundation does a fantastic job of analyzing all of these policies. They've got these different formulas that they could put in to see what the potential tax revenue generated for different taxes, proposals, and stuff like that. So they go through, and what Yang thinks would be enough to fund this freedom dividend is a 10% value-added tax, a tax on financial transactions, taxing capital gains and carried interest in ordinary income taxes, removing a wage cap from Social Security payroll tax, and a $40 per metric ton carbon tax. So the Tax Foundation kind of goes through and shows that they estimate that that this would only fund a little less than half of the Freedom Dividend's $1,000 a month plan. And that basically that a more realistic plan would require basically cutting those benefits by 25%, only giving people $750 per month, and then increasing that value-added tax from the supposed 10%, which I don't even think we have a value-added tax here in America. So going from a proposed new 10% and actually bumping that up to 22%. So it's a great piece. All of these pieces were really cool. I went through and started looking through them. But I don't know if that's crazy enough to actually warrant it being in the top 3 craziest proposals. Because there are certain aspects of the universal basic income that I'm actually kind of sympathetic to. Isaac, what's your kind of thought on that?
You know how I feel about universal basic income. You're just trying to trigger me.
I don't. What is it?
I think it's so stupid. No, you and I talked about this on the show when John was still, before he started selling Windex or whatever.
before we fired him.
John was still puttering around. Is that what you're saying?
Back when we had terrible ratings on this show.
Yeah.
The ratings are so much better now. It was the Failing in the Tank podcast, and now we're on the up and up. No, I hate universal basic income. I really think it's stupid. I think it is such a demeaning idea in some ways to think that humans can't innovate their way out of whatever. Like, if you had asked people in 1800 what jobs will be available in 1900, they wouldn't have had any idea. Just like people in 1900 probably didn't foresee IT being an important industry in the United States. So when you have a rising tide, it lifts all the dinghies, and people are able to pay people to be dungeon masters for them. So I think that there will always be some sort of market for essential, or not even, it's going to be non-essential services that become a larger part of the economy. It's going to be the entertainment industry increasing in size because people have more disposable income and more free time. So you don't need a UBI.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point that you brought up after we ended the talk last week. You were talking about how there are people who are literally getting paid to be Dungeons and Dragons dungeon masters. And then I was talking about the amount of people that are making a living just making like let's play video game playthroughs on YouTube and stuff like that. Like everybody on Patreon basically is just getting money to do just like frivolous things. So if that's like kind of what the new economy starts getting more towards, then so be it. Also, I want to point out that I was just informed that our former co-host on the show, John, is watching. So, hey, how are you doing, sir? Come visit us, man. Bring some Windex samples. Anyways, the one thing that the reason why I said that I am a little bit sympathetic towards the idea of a UBI is because I have seen elaborate discussions of this. And I know, okay, so for example, I believe it was the Hoover Institute. They did, maybe a year ago at this point, they did a debate among 2 limited government advocates about universal basic income. The one was saying that it was a bad idea and saying a lot of the things that Isaac was just saying there. The other one was in favor of it. However, he had a whole bunch of requirements that would have to be in place for his plan to work. And one of them was like a constitutional amendment that was basically barring the revival of old welfare programs. So the idea is that there would be a compromise where we would get rid of all of the existing welfare programs and replace it with this UBI. And because of that, there would be a way more efficient system of doling out this stuff. But the fear would be that once you did that, you would see the slow creeping back of all the different welfare programs that we got rid of in this compromise. So to safeguard against that, he wanted to have a constitutional amendment. I don't know how realistic that is, but because there are people that are on our side of the aisle that think that a system for a universal basic income could theoretically work, that's why I'm a little bit sympathetic towards it.
I just don't think. I just want to say, like, people are just going to raise their prices and they're going to soak up the UBI. Like, that's the problem with it.
There's probably some
Well,
truth to that.
I think there is some truth to that, but they won't. If you theoretically were to cut all the welfare programs and replace it with a UBI, then you're not necessarily you're not putting that much more money into the economy. So I don't think prices would necessarily
But
go
it would be
up.
universal, right? So it'd be an income that's given to everyone.
You don't
So wouldn't
necessarily have to do it it depends on what you mean by that. There's a debate within the UBI circles as to whether you want to actually give it to everybody or you only want to give it to people under a certain income threshold or whatever. So it would depend. Yeah. So if you just said we're not going to have everyone who's on welfare right now, you're not going to there's no more food stamp program, no more welfare programs, all those go away, and instead we're just going to give you a X amount of money every month and on some sort of card, and you just do whatever you want with it. But there aren't going to be any of these welfare programs. Then I don't know that prices would necessarily rise as a result of that, and you wouldn't have this gigantic government bureaucracy and things anymore. But the truth is that a lot of I don't think there are very many Democrats calling for that. Most Democrats who call for some kind of basic income program is in addition to the welfare programs that already exist. So, for instance, Kamala Harris is calling for a Lift the Middle Class Act. She says that it's an earned income tax credit. It would give a taxpayer a refund even if the taxpayer has no income to pay taxes. So I don't know how that can possibly be a refund. How do you get a refund on something that you haven't paid? And it would be up to $6,000 per family. So you're just giving people money who may also be enrolled in all kinds of welfare programs on top of it, or may not be. You're just giving people a huge amount of money. I mean, I think that's kind of a ridiculous proposal. Obviously, you have the free college tuition thing. Canceling all debt for every single student in America with no stipulations attached to it. That's, I think, nuts.
Which you favor.
I do not favor that, but that's a whole other story. Tulsi Gabbard and Eric Swalwell, who screwed me over in our
we have an update on that.
Death pool.
We have an update on that.
We do have an update on that.
Yeah.
But before we get to the update, Tulsi Gabbard wants to lower the voting age to 16. I think that's a pretty stupid policy proposal. So there's a lot to choose from. Getting rid of the Electoral College, if you're a states' rights person, that's a huge issue.
Yes, that was one I was going to bring up as a potential contender. There's been two that I want your consideration on. There's that one, getting rid of the Electoral College, which is just like basically based off of no principles at all, other than we won the popular vote last
Democrats
time.
want to win.
Right.
They want to win. Yeah.
And the other one is stacking the Supreme Court. So, Trump got his couple of people in, so now he's got the majority. But what if we just shove in like 7 more people, and just really stack the court? So I think that could be considered as one of the crazier proposals.
I think so, too. It could also be basically the end of America.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Because people do not. I mean, if you're seriously considering packing the Supreme Court, like that literally could be the end of America. Because if you think that you're just going to, add 5 justices to the Supreme Court, you stack it in your favor, and you're just expecting all these other states to say, okay, yeah, I guess so. Come on. That is,
dude.
That literally could lead to the end of America. I'm dead serious about that.
Texas already thinks it can leave whenever it wants. And if you did that, Texas would be like deuces.
Absolutely. Well, just think about it. Could you imagine if they actually did that? And then they all of a sudden start passing all these crazy left-wing policy proposals or whatever. And the Supreme Court, which has now been totally packed with liberals, just starts rubber stamping everything. Can you imagine on gun rights and certain things like that, abortion? If they started doing these things, states like Texas absolutely would leave. They would say this whole thing's a sham and they're not really following the Constitution anymore, and they would absolutely get out. I mean, I really do think that could be the end of America. So, I in that sense, maybe that's the most radical proposal that you could come up with. Yeah.
So, unless there's any other ones that you can kind of think of, I think the big dog, if we had to rank them 3, 2, 1, the one that's at the top of the pinnacle would obviously be, you guessed it, the Green New Deal. So this is a proposal that seemingly everybody that's running for the Democratic nomination is in favor of. The Green New Deal, obviously, is their solution to combat climate change, which would get us completely off of fossil fuels in any given amount of time, replace it with solar and wind and stuff like that. However, that is just a sliver of what the Green New Deal is. The other components are basically just the wish list of everybody that's on the real far left, kind of the socialist wing of the Democratic Party. So we've got job guarantees, we've got loan forgiveness, student debt forgiveness, I believe, Medicare for all, pretty much everything that you would want to group in there. So that is the pinnacle. I don't think we have any policy proposals that top that one. So if we need to actually nail these down, Isaac, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I would say that's actually, it's got to be number 2. Like packing the court and reforming the Electoral College. I think that's number 1. That's such a huge fundamental shift just to the rules that we've all been playing by for the last since 1787, right?
Nice.
That would be the biggest one. Like the Green New Deal is huge, but that's just like kind of implementing more social programs. Like that's working within the confines.
That's a total overhaul of the economy.
Sure, but it's not a total overhaul of the rules that we've always played by in terms of like this consent of the governed, that the social contract that none of us signed. That's why I think that would actually be the biggest thing.
That's a good case to be made. That actually might be a very interesting way to kind of approach it, Justin. So you start off with the potentially supplying health care to 7 billion people, like literally everyone in the world. Then where you think the pinnacle would be the Green New Deal, and it's like, oh man, if Green New Deal is number 2, what could 1 possibly be? And then boom, Electoral College stacking the Supreme Court with number 1. So what do you think? Do you think we got a good number 3? Chime in there, people that are watching from home. Are we missing something obvious? Is there something that's even crazier than these 3 proposals? Let us know. Justin, what do you think? We got a good solid 3 here?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if any of these things pass, I think the first one is probably the least damaging. If the other 2 pass, you could basically have the end of America. So I think that should be on the top 3. If you have a policy proposal that means you have the end of the United States as we know it, there's a pretty good chance that that should make the list of the top 3. The illegal immigration thing, I suppose, if you had enough illegal immigrants come here, and that could be the end of America too, because if they're all just taking free healthcare, if 50 million people show up in 5 years and they're all getting free healthcare, I mean, I don't know how you're supposed to deal with that. How does America deal with that problem?
So the thing is, if it's Marianne Williamson, their free healthcare would consist of here's some crystals. So
yeah.
It would actually be probably cheaper. We would probably save money.
All right. Well, that's going to be our top 3 list for the craziest proposals from the Democratic candidates. Let's move on to our last topic at hand while we still have time, Justin. So this I'm going to be relying on you. We just posted this on our website, so if you want to read the full text of this, it's a policy brief from the Heartland Institute titled Estimating the Income Tax Hikes Required to Pay for Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All. So, sir, I mean, wasn't the lump sum $34 trillion? Wasn't that enough of a stat for you? Why did you set on to do this paper?
Yeah, so most of the estimates show $32 to $38 trillion over 10 years is the cost for Medicare for All. That's an additional spending for Medicare for All. However, the problem with that is, what does that really mean for you as an individual? I mean, it doesn't really tell you anything. Most people can't connect that number. It's such a massive number. How does anybody connect that number? So what we wanted to do was figure out, what will that mean for individual people? Not just because we want to know how much this could potentially cost individual people, but also because Bernie Sanders especially, but also Elizabeth Warren and other people who are defenders of single-payer healthcare have been running around telling everybody, look, you might actually have to pay more in taxes. Even people in the middle class, they've now been held to that. They actually have had to show that. Some people say that in some of the presidential debates, this has finally come out. Yes, We have to admit it. Some middle class people are going to have increased taxes, but they say, don't worry, because it's going to be offset by all these wonderful benefits that you're going to get. So now you don't have deductibles, you don't have health insurance premiums anymore. And so you're going to save money at the end of the day. That's what they keep telling everyone. So we looked into the numbers and we figured out, all right, how much would it cost for individual tax filers to cover the cost of single payer healthcare? How much would it cost individuals if we just asked them to pay the same amount for the new costs for Medicare for all as we're asking them to pay for existing tax revenues that are being brought in now? How much would it cost? And we used 2017 IRS data to come up with this figure. And what we found was that 40 to 60 million households, not people, but households, would see their taxes increase by so much that it would offset any benefits that they would get for healthcare. 40 to 60 million. And in addition to that, we found that some of the tax increases would be absolutely massive for middle income people. So filers earning, so this could be joint filers or individuals earning $50,000 to $75,000 would likely see their average tax bills go up by $7,700 to $9,100 every year. Families earning $75,000 to $100,000 would see an increase of $12,600 to $14,800. And households that earn $100,000 a year or more, and this could just be two people in a household making $50,000 a year, these are clearly middle-class people, would see on average a $20,000 increase in their taxes that they would have to pay. This is increase. This is not total tax burden. This is how much in additional taxes you would have to pay. And so when you factor in how much it costs to have health care, we've figured out that it would be, that's where we got the 40 million to 60 million figure. So 40 million households to 60 million households will end up paying significantly more in taxes than they will receive in healthcare benefits. And it would be especially bad for individuals. The healthier you are, the worse off it would be for you because you're not using any of your deductible on a year-to-year basis. So you're not going to get any of that benefit. Some people will see increased costs of $5,000 to $10,000. Some people will see significantly more than that. And the more money you earn, the more you're going to end up paying into it, and the worse deal that it's going to be for you. So this is a really bad plan for tens of millions of people. Yes, there are some people who would be better off, especially if you are if you have a family health insurance plan and you earn less than, say, $50,000 a year, but you don't qualify for Medicaid. You're going to save some money as a result of that. If you have a lot of illness in your family or something and you pay a high deductible, you're going to be better off, but only at the expense of making things significantly worse for tens of millions of other families. So this is just a really bad deal.
Yeah, one of the things that I really like about this is that too often I think that when people are kind of estimating the cost of different policy proposals, they always do it in a, like, what's it going to cost, like a household, like, period, right? And that, we've talked about this, that doesn't really show you, because what's the median household income? What if you're above that? What does that mean for you? What if you're above the median household income? What does that mean for you? So what this does is, like, you could look at your tax bracket and see, what does this plan mean for me? And it took a lot of work, but I think it's an extremely valuable thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're exactly right. That's a huge problem. And especially when we're talking about healthcare, they're not even using, here's how much it will cost the average, here's how much it will cost American households. They're not even doing that. They're just saying, here's the cost over 10 years. It's $32 trillion or it's $38 trillion. And most of the time, the numbers that people are using for that are wrong. So this is just... I felt very strongly that we needed to have something that we could go to regular folks and say, here's how much this is going to cost you. Here's why this is a bad deal. And without that evidence, Bernie Sanders and people like that are going to continue to tell everybody, yeah, your taxes are going to go up, but this is a better deal for you. You're going to save money. And they don't tell them, they don't ever tell you how much your taxes are actually going to go up, specifically what that means for you. And that's why we did this. And I think it's going to be really effective. I was on with Stuart Varney on Fox Business just a couple hours ago talking about this. It just came out today. We just published it on our website. So we're going to try to pitch this all over everywhere we can possibly get it. We're going to try to get it all over the news and get the word out that this is not a good deal. And really, when you think about it, it will financially ruin millions and millions of Americans. I mean, just financially ruin them.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, excellent. That will about do it for the topics at hand. Oh, yeah, I did promise an update on our Democratic candidate survivor pool. So it just came out today, right before we started setting up for this podcast, that Mike Gravel, the person that runs pretty much every different campaign, he just dropped out. So I don't know if we have the ability to pull up our little standings thing. Probably not. Don't even try. But if you go onto our Twitter, you can see the little spreadsheet of who drafted who. And Mike Gravel was actually Jim Lakely's third-round pick. So that means 24 points to Jim Lakely, which puts him in second to last place, only behind or only in front of Mr. Justin Haskins, who had
it's
Eric
early.
Swalwell
All right,
drop out.
It's really
Very early.
really early.
So
I
does
mean,
the next
it's
person get
very
23
early.
points.
Yeah, and the next person
Yes,
drops out 23
exactly.
points. You want the least
Exactly.
amount of points possible.
I'm gonna
So
get
right
it.
now,
I'm gonna get it because Klobuchar's done. She's toast.
Really? You think so?
Oh yeah.
All right. I think we did predictions last time, or maybe 2 times ago, of who's going to be the next to drop out.
Well, my understanding is that this round of Democratic debates, this is the last one where they have the gigantic pool of people. They're going to narrow it down after this.
So
And
we might see-
you probably will see some people drop out at that point.
All right. So I think I said Tom Steyer was going to be the next one to drop out because he had just gotten in, and I think he would test the waters out and just drop out. It was Mike Gravel. So does anyone want to change up who their predictions are of who's going to be the next to drop out? He says Klobuchar, Isaac. Wait, no, you said Klobuchar. Justin, you got somebody in mind?
Give me a second.
All
Who did
right.
you say?
I'm going to go with Beto. I think he's donezo.
Oh, I think that's a really good guess. I think
Which
he's in
is
a lot
also
of trouble.
a Jim, drafted by Jim. So Jim might see himself at the bottom of this.
Oh, I
There
want
standings here.
there is, by the way, this rumor that's been floating around now that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are quietly floating the idea of maybe teaming up, and it's
for them.
possible. It's
deserve
possible.
each other. They deserve each other.
They do. They really do. God, can you imagine the meetings between those people? Oh my. But anyway, they may be teaming up, and if that happens, one of them will officially be dropping out to become the vice presidential nominee for that. And so, if that happens, would that happen sooner rather than later? Would they wait?
Probably
Because you
later.
got to remember, I mean, you would think at least until the primaries.
Yeah.
But if the whole point of doing that is so that you will get out early, so that you can, sort of coalesce your power and get everybody on the same page. So I don't know. We'll see.
Possible.
We'll see what happens.
A
It's gonna be
deadly
interesting.
alliance. A deadly alliance. All right, gentlemen, let's call it quits for the day. Thank you all for tuning in for this episode of In the Tank Podcast. Tune in every Friday for a new episode. If you like our show, please subscribe, write a review for us on iTunes. That would be greatly appreciated. You can also find us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, pretty much everything nowadays. If you are an audio-only listener, you want to see our beautiful faces, check us out on our YouTube page. We are doing live shows now, folks. If you would like, you could follow us on Twitter at InTheTankPod. If you have any comments, suggestions, questions, anecdotes, feel free to email us at inthetankpodcast@gmail.com. Isaac, where can the fine people find you?
On the winner's podium at the SPN Bob something Awards. Yeah, throwing down the gauntlet.
You should probably remember what the name of the award that you're nominated for is.
Yeah, you
Bob
probably
Williams
should,
Award,
Isaac.
sir.
Yeah,
This is once again why we need to. I want to take my vote back. So
Justin.
Everyone remember, vote early, vote often, multiple devices every single day for doubling down on failure.
Yes. All right. Justin, where can the fine people find you?
they can find me on Twitter and Facebook at Justin T. Haskins. Look for the big, beautiful blue check mark.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week.